Imagine watching a large octopus, an animal the size of a small dog, sitting calmly in a tank. Now imagine a hole in the side of that tank no wider than a coin. In a matter of seconds, that entire animal pours itself through the gap, one arm reaching, then the head folding, then the whole body flowing after it like thick liquid, and it is gone. It looks impossible. A body that big should not fit through a hole that small. But it does, every single time, and the reason comes down to one hidden part of the octopus that most people have never even thought about. So how do octopuses squeeze through small spaces, and just how small a hole can an octopus fit through? By the end of this, you'll understand the single rule that governs the whole trick. Why an octopus is basically an escape artist wearing no skeleton, and the one hard limit that even the squishiest octopus in the world can never get past. Let's start with the thing that makes all of it possible. The thing an octopus doesn't have. Pick up almost any animal you can think of, and somewhere inside it there is a frame, a skeleton. Bones give a mouse its shape, a fish its ribs, a bird its wings. Bones are what make an animal a fixed size. Your own body can only compress so far before your ribs, your skull, your hips simply refuse to go any smaller. And that really is why most animals can't fit through tight gaps. It isn't the flesh that gets stuck, it's the bone. An octopus has no bones at all. None. No skull, no spine, no ribs, not a single rigid rod anywhere in that soft, bulging body. What looks like a head is mostly a muscular bag holding the gills, the hearts, and the gut. The 8 arms are ropes of pure muscle. There is nothing in there that has to stay a particular shape, and that is the first half of the secret. With no skeleton to jam in the opening, an octopus can deform its whole body almost without limit, squashing and stretching and reshaping itself around whatever it's trying to get through. Why are octopuses so squishy? Because being squishy is the whole survival strategy. A soft body can hide in a crack no predator can follow it into. But if that were the entire answer, an octopus could fit through literally any gap, and it can't. There is a limit, and finding it takes us to the one hard part of the entire animal. Because it turns out an octopus is not completely boneless in the way it matters. Hidden right in the center, where all 8 arms meet, is its mouth. And in that mouth sits a beak, a hard, sharp, curved beak made of tough material that looks startlingly like the beak of a parrot. It is the tool the octopus uses to bite through the shells of crabs and clams, and it is the single most rigid structure in its whole body. The octopus beak is essentially the only hard part. And here is the rule that governs everything. If the beak fits through the hole, the rest of the octopus can follow. If it doesn't, nothing else matters, because that beak will not compress. So the real question, how small a hole can an octopus fit through, has a beautifully simple answer: as small as its beak. Everything else about the animal, the arms, the head, the great soft mantle, all of it can be squeezed down to almost nothing. But the beak is the bottleneck, quite literally the narrowest fixed point the animal has to force through the gap. A large octopus with a beak the size of a small coin can, astonishingly, drag its entire body through an opening barely that wide. That is why the octopus is such a legendary escape artist. The only thing standing between it and freedom is the width of its own bite. Now let's actually watch how the squeeze happens, because it is one of the strangest movements in nature. An octopus doesn't just shove itself at a hole and hope. It works the problem. Usually one arm goes first, slipping through the gap and feeling around on the far side. Then, as that arm finds grip, the octopus begins to funnel the rest of itself after it. The soft mantle, that big rounded body, flattens and elongates, the internal organs shifting to let it happen. The animal changes from a fat, bulging shape into something long and narrow, almost like toothpaste being pushed from a tube. Watch it in slow motion and the body seems to flow rather than move, pouring through the opening in a smooth, continuous stream until, with a final little pull, the last arm slips through and the octopus reassembles itself on the other side as if nothing remarkable just happened. To understand how the arms manage this, you need one beautiful piece of biology. An octopus arm has no bones and no joints, and yet it can be stiff or floppy or bend in any direction or reach out and stretch. How? The arm is what scientists call a muscular hydrostat, the same principle as your own tongue or an elephant's trunk. It is packed with muscle fibers running in every direction, lengthwise, crosswise, and spiraling around, and because muscle can't be compressed, when one set of fibers squeezes, the arm has to change shape somewhere else. Squeeze the crosswise muscles and the arm gets thinner and longer, perfect for threading through a narrow gap. Squeeze others and it curls or turns rigid enough to hold like a bone that appears only when needed. So each of those 8 arms can independently thin itself out and snake through a tight space, then firm up on the far side to pull the body along. 8 boneless, shape-shifting ropes, each one solving its own little piece of the escape, and the octopus isn't squeezing blindly. Its skin is extraordinary. The suckers that line every arm aren't just grippers, they're covered in sensors that can taste and feel at the same time, reading the chemistry and the texture of whatever they touch. As the octopus works its way through a gap, it is literally tasting the surface of the hole, feeling the exact shape of the edges, sensing where there is room and where there isn't. It navigates the squeeze by touch, adjusting arm by arm, sucker by sucker, guiding its soft body through an opening it cannot even see around. It is less like forcing a shape through a slot and more like the animal is feeling out the safest possible path and flowing along it. Put all of this together, no skeleton, a beak as the only hard limit, arms that reshape themselves, and skin that reads surfaces by touch, and you get a creature that is almost impossible to keep contained. The stories are famous, and most of them are true. Octopuses in aquariums have earned a reputation as master escape artists, slipping out of tanks through drain holes, filter pipes, and gaps in the lid that keepers swore were far too small. In the wild, they'll pour themselves into narrow rock crevices to hide, squeeze into empty shells and bottles to use as armor, and slip in and out of crab traps, helping themselves to the bait and leaving through a gap barely wider than their beak. There are well-documented cases of an octopus climbing out of its own tank at night, crossing a stretch of dry floor, raiding a neighboring tank full of tasty crabs, and then slipping back home before morning, leaving the staff baffled by the shrinking crab population. Some aquariums have had to weigh down lids, seal every pipe, and even leave gaps of rough artificial turf around the tank because an octopus dislikes crawling over it just to keep their prisoners from strolling out. To an octopus, almost any container is just a puzzle with a soft solution. And that word, puzzle, matters more than you might think because the octopus doesn't just have an incredible body, it has a genuinely remarkable mind to drive it. An octopus is one of the most intelligent invertebrates on Earth, able to solve mazes, open jars, and remember solutions. But its intelligence is wired in a way that is deeply strange to us. Most of its neurons aren't in its central brain at all. They're spread out down the arms so that a huge share of the animal's nervous system lives in the limbs themselves. In a real sense, each arm has a mind of its own, able to explore, taste, and react partly on its own without waiting for orders from the central brain. When an octopus threads a single arm through a gap to feel around on the far side, that arm is doing its own local problem solving. So the escape isn't just a soft body flowing through a hole. It's 8 semi-independent limbs and a clever central brain all working the same problem at once, which is exactly why an octopus is so maddeningly good at finding the one weak point in any enclosure. So let's come back to the limit, because every superpower has one. The octopus can flatten its body, elongate its arms, taste its way through the dark, and outthink a locked tank. But it can never, ever get its beak through a hole smaller than the beak itself. That is the hard flaw. It's also why the beak is such a giveaway to biologists. Because it is the only truly hard part, the beak is often the one piece of an octopus that survives in the stomach of a predator. A small dark object that tells the scientist exactly how big the animal was and what kind it was. The very thing that limits the escape is also the only part tough enough to leave a lasting trace. And it's worth being honest here about how squishy really works. An octopus can't literally squeeze through a truly solid pinhole, and it isn't infinitely stretchy. What it can do is astonishing enough on its own, reshape a body many times the width of a gap down to the single narrow limit set by that one hard beak. And this is where the story turns from wonder to something surprisingly useful, because engineers have looked at the octopus and seen a blueprint. For a long time, our machines have all been like us, built around hard frames, rigid joints, stiff metal limbs, strong but unable to fit through a gap smaller than themselves. The octopus points to a completely different way of building things. Right now, researchers are creating soft robots inspired directly by octopus arms, machines made of flexible, muscle-like material with no rigid skeleton at all, that can bend in any direction, squeeze through tight spaces, and grip delicate objects without crushing them. The dream is machines that could bore themselves through rubble to reach survivors after an earthquake, or slip through the human body to perform surgery with the gentlest possible touch, all borrowed from an animal whose entire genius is having almost nothing hard inside it. So the next time you see an octopus, remember what you're really looking at, not just a strange sea creature with 8 arms and big curious eyes, but one of the most elegant escape machines evolution has ever produced. A body with no bones to trap it, arms that turn to muscle rope on demand, skin that tastes the world it's squeezing through, a mind scattered brilliantly across its limbs, and a single hard beak that quietly sets the only rule that matters. If the beak fits, the octopus fits. Everything else is just soft, clever, unstoppable flow. So here's what we want to know from you. Now that you understand the trick, what surprised you the most? That an octopus has no bones at all, that its only hard part is a hidden parrot-like beak, or that most of its brain is actually in its arms? Tell us in the comments. And if this changed the way you see these strange, soft, impossibly clever animals, stay with us, because the natural world is full of impossible things that turn out to be true.